welcome to a new episode of the Habibis, 3 Arab game developers drinking good Arab tea. My name is Rami Ismail. I'm your host for this episode.
And I'm Osama Dorias.
And I'm Fauzi Mesmor. And I want to jump the gun this time.
Okay.
Before, Rami, because last week we didn't get the chance to talk about the stuff. We get the chance to talk about the stuff that we did when we watched. So I thought maybe I just jump right into it immediately before we get derailed.
Fair enough.
And then if it ever gets to Osama, if he gets his chance, we'll see. Otherwise, we'll save it to next week. Who knows?
Who knows?
So I have a game. I want to talk about a movie and a TV series. I want to talk about.
Well-rounded.
I'm grabbing a bunch of stuff from 2 weeks worth of material here. All right, let's talk about the game first. The game I want to talk about is called the Famicom Detective Club. You guys heard about this game?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I have not. No.
It's so this game there's a bit of a historical piece beyond this game. This game is basically 2 games. One is called The Missing Heir, and the other is called The Girl Who Stands Behind. Those are Japanese adventure games that initially were released in 1988.
Wow.
That has never had a release in the West before. An official release. There's been fan translations and stuff like that, but this is the first time they get an official release on the Nintendo Switch. It's also a complete remake of those games. The interesting factor about those is that both of these games were the first writing on one of the earlier projects for Yoshio Sakamoto.
Oh wow.
So that's before he started working on Metroid and all of these games. These are the games that he started working on before, and I think it's amongst his first writing credits, if not his first writing credit.
I think it was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting game for its historical significance, I think.
Is it a visual novel? I'm looking at screenshots. That's what it looks like to me. But it is
a Japanese adventure game. It is like a visual novel in the terms of there is a little bit of puzzles to solve in an adventure game kind of way. You need to look at various areas in the different screens, try to find clues, and then talk to people about those clues in order for you to progress to the other screen where you could do the same, basically. It's one of those things that's like I'm excited to play it just because of like I mentioned earlier, the historical significance and whatnot. But it's a product of its time. That's for sure. The writing is also kind of a product of itself. So in one of the games, I don't want to spoil much, but I just want to illustrate this point here. In one of the games, you wake up as a protagonist who has apparently fell off a cliff and, shock to everybody, lost their memory.
Right.
And then another character finds you and you go oh, you seem like to have fell off your cliff and lost your memory. It's okay. I'll take you back home to nurse you back to health. No, nobody thought about calling the ambulance at this point.
Right.
So you come to and you were oh, thank you for taking me home, strange man, and taking care of me. But I still don't remember anything. So I want to go back to where I originally fell off the cliff and see if I can find any clues. But
is it just the premise that's a little out of that, or
no?
Does the story
everything about it. Everything about it is within the same veins of ridiculousness as I just mentioned. But I have a soft spot for these things, and for people that were waiting to play in this game, I'm happy that they get the opportunity to play it.
Right, they would have been waiting since
something like that.
86. I think those games are older than me.
Yeah, they're super old. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
did you just call me super old?
No, it's the other way around.
Those games are older than you, so the games are super old.
Right.
Basically, he's calling me super old because I'm older than this game.
Osama's super old, yeah, for sure. Osama's our wise elder, anyway.
I've never been called that before, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Good. Young.
Usually goofball or something like that. Those are adjectives I'm more used to. But
It's Hago-sama for the show.
Thank you.
Right.
The movie.
The movie, yes.
Yes.
I saw a Danish movie called Another Round.
I thought for a moment the movie was called a Danish movie.
Danish
And that sounds so reasonable to me that a Danish company would make a movie called a Danish movie.
Is it because they have a pastry called the Danish?
Sorry, what was the name of the movie?
The movie is called Another Round.
Another Round. That also sounds pretty Danish.
Round or realm?
Round, as in rounded drinks. I think the Danish name is Druk. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, it means something like binge drinking.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie that won best foreign movie Oscar this year, and it was nominated for best director and also nominated for best picture. And it was also nominated for the Golden Globe for best foreign movie, and ended up taking the Oscar for that. I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's very haram, of course, because there's a lot of drinking involved.
Maximum haram.
So it's a group of school teachers that basically they at the dinner at some point they're discussing a Danish psychiatrist. I don't want to pronounce his name because it's one of those really difficult to pronounce letters, like A's with circles on them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That psychiatrist is saying that he theorizes that we are living our lives with we should have the basic alcohol content in our blood of 0.05% that will allow us to be more creative and relaxed. So those old teachers, I think they were celebrating one of their colleagues' 40th birthday party. They decide to do a study for science if they can just all be drunk the entire time, basically, and see how that affects their lives and their teaching methods. So it's
sounds like a nightmare to me, to be quite honest.
It is. It's like it's a movie like that kind of jumps a bit between comedy and drama. The premise is obviously ridiculous, like just the minute you discuss it, go like, we should try that, and you go like, that will lead to alcoholism probably. It's like the two logical reactions, conclusions that any adult will come to as you start discussing these things. But ultimately, the movie is about four people trying to deal with their demons in some way, and kind of like desperate to reach into certain parts of their lives that they find solace in substance abuse in some way. I'm not going to go more about what that is because I do believe that it's. I don't want to go into spoiler territory, and it's something that's worth enjoying. It's it's very, very emotional and touching movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's.
I recognize the main actor, Mads Mikkelsen. I didn't know his name before looking it up, but he's like a character actor in a lot of movies. He does.
That's true.
A lot of
and games, right?
And games, yeah. He was in Death Stranding.
It's in Death Stranding.
As a voice, yeah. That's pretty cool.
No, he's a really good actor. I like his stuff quite a bit. And I think when he's like acting in his native language, just like allows him to just give it his all. So I thought he was absolutely brilliant in this movie.
That's great.
Highly enjoyed it. Very, very, very good. Very good movie. I'm not gonna. I feel like I've been talking for hours, so I'm gonna quickly just talk about Love, Death, and Robots. I watched the first season and back when it came out, and I've just finished watching the second season.
Right? How is it? I mean,
you guys know what that is, right?
No, I know Netflix. No, never heard of it. But the series,
Netflix is just like this is DVD.
I've seen the
that
first
you get.
season. Yeah,
it's kind of like Game Pass, but for TV, right?
Exactly.
it's not as good as Game Pass, but it's pretty good.
No, it's not as good as it's the Microsoft of TV shows.
I love it. I've seen the first season.
Yeah, I've seen the first season, and that was honestly pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it.
So, like the first season for me, I think it was made by Blur Studios. And Blur Studios is like a VFX and animation studio that do so much in games to movies to everything. Like they've done cinematic trailers for like Batman Arkham City, Halo, Star Wars The Old Republic, all sorts of like different stuff. And they also like, they make CG sequences for movies, like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and all sorts of stuff. And I think like if I would summarize what Love, Death and Robots is that Netflix went to those guys and were like, we give you money and you just make a bunch of small episodes about anything you want. And tell your teams to go wild in terms of creativity and artistic and technical showcase.
Right.
And we want every episode to have nothing to do with the other. You can be as gory or R-rated as you want, basically. First season was 18 episodes. They vary between 5 to 20 minutes. And like every episode is like a team going like we're just gonna go bonkers and do whatever we want. Season 2 is 8 episodes and it continues this tradition.
You know what it reminds me of?
Yeah.
Remember the Animatrix that came out around the same time?
Animatrix. It is. Yeah. That's a really good analogy,
right.
Osama.
Yeah, it's very close.
Very close. In which like that's around the same theme, but like every episode is like this artistic tour de force in a direction. And for better or worse, I think in both seasons they share the same things. They're all artistically and visually stunning.
Yep.
But I think the writing and the storytelling is a hit or miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Some episodes are fun to watch. Some episodes don't make sense. A lot of them like finish and go like that was I don't know. But like the entire time you watch it and go like that's some good art.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It makes me think of sometimes like it would be cool if like there was a video game equivalent of this, which like let's get every like major studio in the industry and ask them to make a 15-minute game and then make a season out of that.
But I think that is really one of the defining things of Love, Death, Robots is even if an episode is not good, it's like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So whatever, like if it's not good, you pretty things hit your eyeballs for like 10 minutes, and then you're like, well, that wasn't great.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
There used to be like Chain Jam, by the way. Have you heard of that?
What is it? Change Jam?
Chain Jam, like a chain, like things chained to each other.
No. Yeah.
It was this indie idea where there would be a number of rules of the save file, of how a save file was structured and what you could save into the save file. And then every game in that jam had to use the same save file, but you could do with the data in it whatever you wanted.
That's incredible. I love that idea.
So it would load from that save game and it would save back to that save game. And there would be rules as to how that would work. But beyond that, you could do whatever you want. So some people would load the data in and make it a car. Some people would load the data in and then save it and then load the data in another game. And it would be a platformer and then save it and then narrative. And then that was it. There was just like these definitions of what each value in the save game were. And then you could do it whatever you want. It was so good.
What came out of that? I would love to play.
Mostly nonsense as usual, but it was really cool.
Yeah, I was going to say the closest thing to this from video games that I know of is Double Fine's Amnesia Fortnite, where they made a whole bunch of little game jams from their studio and released them on Steam. I remember playing them back then. They were all like short 5-15 minute experiences. some of which went on to become either very similar or very different games. Like I remember one of them, which was a game, quote unquote, more of an experience that I played with my kids, where it was like monsters playing musical instruments, which became the Sesame Street Connect game that I also bought and played with my kids. So that was a great experience that carried over. But yeah, so it did exist to some level.
We do something similar in my current studio, in which like we have hack weeks occasionally.
Yeah.
And when we're doing those hack weeks, there's a game jam included, and then like a bunch of people just team up and start making some cool games. And then usually by the end of the game jam, we just publish those games on our website for anybody to kind of like play and check out. There's some cool stuff
that kind of stuff is fun.
Yeah,
I mean, game jams can be so fun. I've organized a few. One of my favorite, one of the favorite ones I organized was called F This Jam. Where the entire point of the jam was to make games in a genre you hate.
Okay,
and it was
cool.
really, really fun. It was really, really fun. So many people came up with a lot of sports games got made, because it turns out indie game developers tend to not like sports games very much. Racing games, lots of racing games.
That's so interesting. I don't know which genre I would pick as the one I don't like. I think I pretty much like a few games in every genre.
There must be the one genre where you're like, that's just kind of not my thing. I wouldn't make something like that. That's kind of the thing.
My instinct normally would be walking simulators, and yet some of the walking simulators I play are some of my favorite games. It's just in general, it's not a thing. Like I'm passionate about gameplay. And the ones that are just walk through the scene and will tell you a story are not less my jam. And yet, I really love the Stanley Parable, for example. So, there's always the exception to a rule. But like for even like I guess I'm the exception.
I would play an Osama walking simulator.
Yeah,
I'd make one just for you, both of you. That was
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
He'll be dropping wisdom at us as we're walking by.
The honorable elder Osama.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, what would Fuzzy make? Fuzzy, what would you make? What is your anti-genre?
Like I start to think like what kind of genre that wouldn't, like a hockey game? Maybe because I don't understand hockey.
Hockey. That's baseball for me. Yeah.
Baseball.
Well, I mean, you can't say hockey because Osama's here.
Yeah, I actually used to love. I played hockey, but I used to love watching hockey too. I used to love playing baseball, but watching.
I don't understand baseball.
Yeah.
I genuinely do not understand the sport. Like, and the worst thing about baseball is that one of the inventors of it looks just like me. To the point where Frank Lanz at the NYU used to joke. I was the butt of a joke where he said that game developers haven't changed looks in centuries, and he would just put the photo of the guy that invented baseball and a photo of me right next to each other, and it's like the same. It looks the same. It's ridiculous.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
But I can't find him. What's his name?
I genuinely can't. I don't remember. This is a Frank Lance thing. Ask him.
But Rami, I think you would make the hell out of an anime baseball game.
Oh yeah, but that's the thing. Like baseball as a game, I don't get baseball as a game because it's like, okay, I get American football, right? It's lots of starting and stopping, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? But then baseball, it is this entirely static sport where there is like a burst of like 5 seconds of stuff happening, and then in between, everybody is trying to cheat. But within the rules.
It's very American.
And then you just sit there and like, from what I understand from people that really love baseball, the point of baseball is that you can eat chicken wings while watching it.
While playing
it. That's it.
Depending on your position. It could be like some of these guys don't look athletic to me. I'll tell you that much.
Just standing there. But okay, to be fair, there is, like in every sport, there's incredible athleticism in it. Sometimes I saw this amazing catch the other day of somebody who jumped, hit a fence in the jump, flipped over, and mid-flip caught the ball and then landed outside of the field. And there was a big discussion over whether that was still a home run or not. Because she landed outside of the field. It was an incredible catch. But that's the thing. Like, I see that the best moments of baseball are very intense, very interesting, but like
But
My
even
God.
the quiet moments, like the amount of spatial awareness that you have to have at any given point if you're on the field in baseball is higher than any other sport, in my opinion. I've played basketball, soccer, hockey, and I've played baseball. And baseball, you have to always constantly know where every other player is, otherwise they're going to steal a base. So it's this. I'm looking at the person in front of me, and I'm looking around constantly. So even if they're not necessarily moving, they're there. They don't they're there. They're present.
I deeply respect it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, that's okay.
I don't understand it. Like hockey, I get hockey.
Yeah, hockey's like soccer on skates, right?
Right, it's soccer on skates, and the Canadians like it. Like, okay, fair enough. And then I get soccer, I get tennis, I get badminton, I get all the Olympic sports except for the triple jump. I don't understand the triple jump. Very impressive, but what?
Do you get cricket?
I
get cricket, yeah. Squash.
How could you get cricket and you don't get baseball?
I get cricket and I don't get cricket at the same time. I understand the rules, but I can't understand how people would watch a game for a week or something like that.
There's an amazing Dutch sport called vierliepen, and it is effectively, pole vaulting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pole vaulting if it was over
volcanoes.
A river.
Oh, okay. That's still cool.
And,
what?
and you don't start at the end of the. So with pole vaulting, you start at the end of the stick, right? Yeah. You put one end in the ground, and then you put the other end is in your hands.
Yeah.
And then you launch yourself over it. With vierliepen, you start kind of like in the middle of the stick, and then as you go up, you're climbing up in the stick.
What?
And then from the highest point, kind of like launching yourself to the other side of the river. So you're dropping down from like 7 or 8 meters high. So I don't know if it's 7 or 8, but like from quite a bit high, you launch yourself over the water. And I'm just like, this is literally the dumbest thing I've seen anybody do with their body in my entire life. Wow. But it's a sport in North Netherlands, in Friesland.
I just looked it up, and after spelling it wrong 3 times, I just typed in Netherlands pole jumping, and I found it. And yeah, it's just as ridiculous as you're describing.
They're literally climbing the pole as they're launching over. I don't understand how the physics work. If this happened in a video game, I would file a bug report with the physics.
That's hilarious. And the black and white pictures of this is even more. Yeah. It's like the best episode of Al Hisn, actually.
Right. But yeah, so those happened. Anyway,
that's hilarious.
Back to games.
Okay.
You see, self-fulfilling prophecy. I knew this was going to happen.
I knew it.
All right. Well, I don't have much, so that's easy. I played more Mass Effect. I've made it halfway through No, I'm near the end of Mass Effect 2. I'm wrapping up on. I've wrapped up on all the loyalty missions except for one. I've done most of the side quests. You know what really has been a treat though? So I played Mass Effect 1 when it came out, I played Mass Effect 2 when it came out, and I played Mass Effect 3 when it came out, and never touched them again, right? Mm-hmm. So I've never played any of the DLCs.
Ooh, tell me about the DLCs. I haven't either.
Yeah, me either.
And they're so good. At least, I don't know whether they're good for Mass Effect 3. The Mass Effect 1 DLC is called Asteroid X-57 or something. And it's okay. It's a beautiful environment, especially for Mass Effect 1 sort of era. And it's a pretty good mission. But the Mass Effect 2 ones most of them are incredible.
Okay.
So you've got one called Overlord, which is, it's a bit uncomfortable. It's clearly 2010 writing. It's a little, it's pretty ableist. But the atmosphere is incredibly well done. This hostile intelligence has taken over a base and is just messing with you. Mm-hmm. And there's like a VR battle, and there's like all sorts of stuff happening. It's in this beautiful planet that you can race around in a vehicle. The vehicle is as bad as it's worse than the Mako, honestly. But the environment is beautiful. There's 2 new characters, Zaid, Masani, and Kasumi Goto.
What? There's an Arab character? That sounds Arabic.
Zaid Masani, I wish he was more interested given his name, but he's basically grumpy mercenary man. And Kasumi is Japanese kleptomaniac girl.
Okay.
She's pretty cool. She's kind of like this the stealthy, sneaky one that knows everything happening in the ship at any given point. So she can tell you all sorts of like little secrets and interactions the other characters are having, which is kind of cute. Hearing how people are reacting to things. But I have to give it there's this DLC called Lair of the Shadow Broker, and it might be the best DLC I've played in my life.
Is it the same Shadow Broker from Mass Effect 1?
So yeah, it's the Shadow Broker, and it tells the story of... It basically tells the story of what happened to... with minor spoilers here, it tells the story of what happens with Liara between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, and you kind of go on an adventure with her. It's incredibly well written. It kind of goes from like espionage to thriller to just completely bonkers sci-fi battles. Beautiful environments, really, really creative, and really fun to have Liara around. So it's just very, very good. When the mission started, I realized that I hadn't played it yet, and I'm like, this is new. From that point to the moment that DLC wrapped up, I just had a giant grin on my face.
So my main question to you, I'm just curious what the setup is for the DLC, because you just mentioned that the mission started before you realized you were playing DLC content. Is that really how the DLCs felt? They felt like if you've never played Mass Effect 2, you wouldn't know what's DLC and what isn't.
Yeah,
right?
you wouldn't. There was no way to know. The only way you could tell is that the two DLC characters, that you get them immediately at the start, basically. Like their missions open up immediately in kind of a weird way compared to all the other ones. Like Zaid, you just walk into and he just goes like, "Oh yeah, I'll join you." And then he has because he's a mercenary, like he just gets paid, so he's happy. And their loyalty missions are available right from the start. Like that's really the only thing that's like, that's weird. Why would they be? But in terms of the missions, no, I think it would be really hard to tell.
I get that, by the way, because if you're like buying a DLC, you don't want to have anything between you and enjoying that DLC.
Yeah, the DLC. Yeah,
exactly. So it makes sense, game design wise, why they would do it that way. But yeah, you're right. It does feel odd for someone playing it for the first time.
There'd also be a lot of like dependencies if you want to stick it in the middle somewhere, and it just might break so many things. It's very complicated. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I would have liked if the loyalty missions had the same blocker, because everybody's loyalty mission in Mass Effect 2 has a mission that you need to complete before you can start on those. So I would have liked to have that same blocker. But yeah, it's a little weird. Like that's the only thing. Like the DLC missions are obviously missions, and they're obviously visible on the map from the very start of the game. So you're getting all these like end of universe sort of threats thrown at you in like the opening emails, and you're like, okay, so the universe is ending in these 7 different ways. That seems bad. But the quality honestly is really, really impressive. I'm very excited for the Mass Effect 3 DLCs. I've heard that there's one particular one that is dearly beloved by almost everybody, so I'm excited. There's apparently also one that I should play for Mass Effect 2 after I complete the campaign. So I'm getting ready for my end of campaign trip, which is, to me, honestly, that's the part of Mass Effect 2 that is burned into my memory and will never let go. So I'm very excited to replay the end of Mass Effect 2.
I'm still in Mass Effect 1. I'm about halfway through. I play at a slower pace. Lots of things, lots of reasons.
It's very exciting to watch this race between you and my mom.
She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
She's completed 2 of the 3 main missions now.
Well, it's not a competition. She's gonna beat me, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. What's really interesting to me, 2 things. The first is that I played Mass Effect in when they came out in a similar way as I play them now. I was, in the industry, super busy crunching at the time that Mass Effect 1 came out. So I had like little pockets that I could play.
And I was a high school student, mate.
2000.
Listen, I'm like, oh no.
This is 2007. This was the beginning of my career when I started, and I was crunching. There was a lot of crunch. So I would often play 2-3 hours, then it would have a week or two where I couldn't play at all because I was working, and then I jump back in, and there was a lot of, oh yeah, that's where I left off. So it wasn't. I remember that now that I'm playing through it. I'm like, oh yeah, that I thought this was in a later game because I played it so much later than this other sequence,
Right.
and the thing is, because I played it in that way, my memory of it is like fragmented. And when I start playing a scene, as soon as I start playing the scene, it's instantly familiar. But the second before like a mission launches, I could not tell you that this is the mission that's going to start next. And that's such a weird feeling. I'm enjoying it because it's really like I'm playing it for the first time. It really is. The second thing that's odd is that all those things you said about Ashley, they're true. They're absolutely
so
true.
Oh
she
my God.
is. But listen, I have, in my defense, this happened at a part in my life and a part in my career where I was like the discourse on racism and microaggressions and all those things was very different back then in my life when I played this. And I'm pretty outspoken about this. I've given a few talks about it. Even in the industry, I was faced with a lot of microaggressions. I didn't know the word for it then, but all the time I was on the defensive all the time. I was explaining Arab culture and Islam on a near weekly basis to a coworker all the time. So for me, Ashley was normal. It was like she was like a coworker, and I was like, who just said something like racist to me, who I have to go and say, no, you see, that's not the right way to say this, and this is not right. She didn't stand out at all. In today's my sensibilities today, I'm like, did she just say that? Back then, it's like, oh God, another one of those. Just didn't stand out at all.
It's wild how many like little things like that. Because I've been thinking about this obviously a lot as well. You know that thing where everybody knows that I drink Coca-Cola,
Yeah,
cane sugar Coca-Cola. You know why that started? It's just a way for me to get people to stop offering me beer. That's when I just started spreading the story that I only drink cane sugar Coca-Cola. And that got so out of hand that at some point I only got cane sugar Coca-Cola wherever I went. And I was like, this is too much. This is too much Coca-Cola. Yeah, it's the same thing where it's like, for me as a Muslim Arab, a lot of the industry is not really built for Arabs, let alone for Muslims. I recognize that.
I remember I actually didn't used to like ginger ale as a kid. I started drinking ginger ale because when I used to go to these office parties, if you have ginger ale in your cup, people assume it's alcohol and they stop offering you alcohol.
Right.
And I got to like ginger ale because I was drinking it so much. I acquired the taste.
I thought ale was alcoholic, so I never drank ginger ale. There's this other thing. This is the funniest thing. Avocado?
Yes.
So there's a Dutch-only liquor called Advocaat, which is it's almost spelled the same as avocado, except for there's a D in front of the first V. So Advocaat. And it's a very strong liquor. So for years, I thought people were having sandwiches with like strong liquor on it. And I was so confused by people getting like an avocado sandwich. I'm like, mate, it's morning. Like, are you sure you want that? And they're like, yeah, no, it's like very fresh. I'm like, okay. So for years I didn't eat avocado because I thought it was liquor.
All right, I guess this is the episode of tangent. So let me bring it back to games again. That's totally okay.
Well,
some of the most interesting conversations.
Right? Yeah, let's go.
I did have one more game. So the other game I played is called The Wild at Heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game that's on. I'm playing it on Xbox Series X. It's on Game Pass. I had never heard about it before. I had never seen it before. It just popped up on my new and noteworthy on Game Pass, and I'm like, I fell in love with the art before I even played it. I watched the trailer, and I'm like, this game is gorgeous. So it's a game that has a lot of different gameplay elements that we're used to, but it's greater than the sum of its parts, and the end result is it's not exactly like anything I've ever seen before. It is a brand new experience. You are on an adventure, like the story is that you're a little kid and you're running away from home. That's like, this is not really a spoiler. You figured this out in the first 10 seconds of the game. Then you like embark on this crazy quest, and in this magical world, like without giving away too much. That's what it is. There's so much discovery. There's so much surprise in it. From that point on, I go in blind because that's what I did. I knew nothing about this. Didn't know what the mechanics were going to be. Didn't know what the story was going to be. I didn't the trailer. I didn't even finish it. I clicked it. I saw a little bit. I'm like, okay, I'm downloading this. I downloaded it. I played it. And if you don't know much about it, that's enough. I'll still talk a little bit more about the mechanics and whatnot, but I don't want to give anything away. The surprises are really cool. The mechanics, mainly, it kind of mixes Pikmin, because you have these little sprite type characters that eventually you pick up and you're able to throw at things, with Luigi's Mansion, because you have like this vacuum cleaner type peripheral, like device where you're able to suck them back when you throw these little Pikmin type sprites. The artwork is gorgeous. And there's a lot, like, it keeps shocking me. There's a day night cycle, so when you're out in the forest, if you're out at night, it gets dangerous and you have to get back to the base camp. There's a heavy element of exploration. There's some Metrovania where you're going to unlock little abilities and more sprite types later to unlock more new environments. The characters are charming. The ones that you encounter, that you talk to, they're charming, and in some cases really, really funny. The aesthetic is so
it's pretty
pleasing.
right.
Like,
it's just
music-
really,
Oh,
really
graphics are
pretty. It is
crazy, beautiful.
ridiculous.
It's so gorgeous. It's really good looking. It feels hand painted, like any screenshot.
It's just the kind of game where you look at it and you're like, okay, an artist was creative lead on this. Like, there's no way it was not the artist that was creative lead on this.
Exactly. I'm really enjoying it. Like, one of the first feedback that I had when I started playing it is that the combat is lacking. But honestly, they could have made the whole game without combat, and it wasn't lacking. It was just you're intentionally not given the tools because you're supposed to use the sprites to engage with everything. So they're not going to make you like a badass. They're not going to give you those tools on the main character himself. So they made like good decisions. The one thing that happened that I'm going to mention, because I'm still a little bitter about it, but it's still not going to take away the game, is just a little bit. So at one point, it's kind of my fault, but it was set up for this. At one point, I realized that you can throw the Pikmin type sprites just out of reach. Like, when you throw them to vacuum them up with your vacuum cleaner, you have to step a little bit, like a pixel forward. Otherwise, you might not be able to retrieve them if they bounce off something and go a little bit further. And there's no way to call them other than to suck them with your vacuum cleaner. So at one point, I'm like, wait a sec, what happens if you throw them out of reach and you need them to like unlock a path and you can't get any more? And I tried it and I got like stuck. And
this is like Fauzi telling a story where he goes like, you know what, I took my old car and I drove in a monsoon. And I can't believe the car stopped. Can't believe it.
It was raining and I still took the car out. And you know what? To my surprise,
It broke.
It stopped in the rain. Who would have thought?
That aside, this game is a pure delight,
Right.
and it's one of the reasons I wasn't able to make so much headway into Mass Effect. It's because like I couldn't really put it down, and the art style specifically. I don't know if you have ever heard of this studio, but there's a studio, an Irish studio called Cartoon Saloon. It's kind of a European studio, but mostly Irish, from what I understand. They make these beautiful animated movies. They make Secret of the Kells, if you've heard of it.
No.
They made no Song of the Sea, which is my daughter's favorite. They have a very unique art style, and this game kind of has an art style that's similar. They even made the Breadwinner, which actually takes place in Afghanistan, and it's a really good story as well. And they made another one that I watched recently with my kids, but I can't remember. It has to do with wolves.
How do I not know
I was just
any
about
of
to say,
these?
this is all new stuff to me.
I have seen Song of the Sea.
Yes.
And now that
You've
I've
watched
seen
it
all of
or
the-
you've
I've
seen it?
No, I've seen the movie. I mean, like, I've watched the movie, looked
Yes,
at
yes.
the movie while it was playing. All the-
I was just clarifying that you didn't see it on Netflix and pass it by, like you
No, no,
recognize
no,
it.
no.
I scrolled by it once.
I scrolled by. No, I watched it. That was really good. Now I get what you're talking about.
Yes,
Having
yes.
seen one of those movies.
Yes,
And yeah,
exactly.
you're right. The art style is very similar.
Yes, it really has that aesthetic. It has that feel. And what I love about, I know we spoke about this a little bit last week as well. You know, there are these coming of age movies, these like children going on adventure movies that I absolutely love either rewatching or watching new ones with my kids, because it gives you that sense of adventure and wonder.
Sorry,
like,
I just had when I was editing last week's episode, there's a moment where you're explaining those movies and I'm just confused because I've never seen anything. And at one point I go, Lord of the Rings? And you should have seen my face listening to myself ask Lord of the Rings. I was just like, oh my God, Rami. Really, that's what you came up with.
It's kind of like that, but with less arch, right, Rosie? Yeah.
It's one of the benefits. You can edit that stuff out.
I did it.
Yes,
I did it. It was.
He did it. He kept it. I heard it again.
I would feel very unfair taking out all the silly stuff I say, but then leaving your stuff. So,
but yeah, just to bring it back to that, watching these, these are movies that were made recently. Some of them came out like last year or a few years ago, but they feel instantly nostalgic and instantly like movies I grew up with, because they have that feeling of childhood just like in it. You know, it's just embedded in it. That it takes me back to when I used to watch like cartoons as a kid. That sense of wonder where they don't follow a formula exactly. You don't know what's going to happen next because you don't have that experience. You don't have that, like repertoire. Like you don't have that library.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
You don't know that when the heroes all get beaten down by the bad guy, that it's going to be okay 2 episodes later.
Yes.
You're not quite sure yet.
Yes.
Like the Megazord is on fire, and you're like, oh no, how will the world ever be okay again?
Exactly.
And it's like they're gonna have a second Megazord that's cooler. It's like that.
What kind of shows did you grow up watching, or some?
Well, okay, so I remember we watched, when I was really young, I was still living in the Arab Emirates, because after we left Iraq, we went to the Arab Emirates. My favorite TV show, to this day, I vaguely remember like the theme song. I must have been 4 or 5 when I watched it. It was called Al-Layth al-Abyad, which is the White Lion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Kimba, the White Lion.
Yeah. Kimba, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the TV show that inspired The Lion King and Simba. It's there are a lot of parallels.
That show is great, man.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. That was like probably my defining cartoon growing up. There were others too. There was another one that when I first came to Canada that I recognized, because I remember it starting to, like, I had watched some episodes that were dubbed in Arabic in the Emirates, and then it was the same show dubbed in French when I came here in Canada. So it's weird to have that juxtaposition where you're watching one show and as a kid it switches languages in your head, especially from a language you knew well, which was Arabic at the time, to one that I was just learning. It was Rémi Sans Famille. I don't remember the name in Arabic.
Yeah.
Rimi,
You know what
in
I'm
Arabic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a show that played that transition in my life where I actually started watching the first episodes in Arabic and the last ones in French. And it was a really dark show.
It was so dark.
It was
in Dutch, it's called Alleen op de Wereld, or Alone on the World. I'm like, yeah.
But it's literally what it was. It was about an orphan who lost his parents and had to like live with this old man and his like dogs, and then the old man dies, and the kid is all alone again. And
all the spoilers on the show, but yes,
it's a 40-year-old show.
This is a 40-year-old.
This is like a 150-year-old book. Whatever. Like, I know we're careful with spoilers on the show, but I think after copyright expires, I think it's okay.
Fair.
What about y'all?
A lot of the shows we used to watch growing up. So we used to watch a lot of anime growing up, dubbed in Arabic.
Right.
And a lot of them had that in common, like Sally, Lady, a bunch of Bugs animes. They were all about like an orphan trying to find their parents, and then things go miserable. It's actually one of the things I discovered when I went to Japan, actually, is that this is something that the Arabs, as well as the French and the Italians, I think like a lot of South Europe, from the same generation, they grew up watching a lot of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Majid, Grandizer, all of this kind of stuff. one of the things I used to do with my team in Japan when we go out, like on a dinners or the drinks nights, is that we had this drinking game. I would show them a photo of an anime I used to watch as a kid, like here's Basit, or here's Al-Layth al-Abyad, or here's like Qaryat al-Tut. Like just show them like a still picture of an anime I watched growing up, and then almost always one of them would go like, "Wow, Furui," as in like very old, and then they all start looking through their phones. And then, like, the first person that discover what it's actually called in Japanese wins, and everybody else drinks.
Right.
That was like
That's
a common theme. Because I discovered that I watched so many of them that I was able to like MC these nights like for a year.
Wow, that's
I
incredible.
like had like 90 shows of like from the 70s or 80s anime that I could just show them a picture like, oh, what is that? And then they start looking for it.
Well, I've watched all the ones you just mentioned. I loved Grandizer. I loved Captain Tsubasa or Captain Majid. I loved all these cartoons growing up as well.
I was so upset. I was so upset about Captain Tsubasa. I genuinely thought that was Arabic. Genuinely thought it was Arabic.
I thought they were all. I genuinely thought all of them were
Right.
Arabic. Like I did not know there was a thing as Japanese animation
I had no
until
idea.
I rediscovered it in my like late teens or mid teens.
What do you?
I'm like, oh my
What
god!
do you mean his name is Tsubasa? Get out of here.
Exactly.
It's actually one of like the interesting things is that because we've watched so much Japanese anime growing up, the first time I traveled to Japan, and even when I lived there, whenever I go to an area, even an area that I've never been before, it feels nostalgic to me.
Right.
Which is strange. Like I've never been there before, but then like as I go there, it's my childhood watching all of these cartoons. A lot of these places are very nostalgic.
I wonder what a Japanese Arab would think of. Now that like seeing Captain Tsubasa and then going to the Arab world and seeing Captain Majid being like all the names are wrong. I really like
So it's
Captain
actually
Majid.
one of the things it's very funny for me. It's like there was one of these animes called Sanshiro. I don't know if you guys watched that as a kid.
No.
It's an anime in which like kids control small robots using their computers, and the robots wrestle each other. And there's tournaments about that.
I know that it's
That anime,
Robot Wars.
that anime. Not that, no. It's called Sanshiro. It was very popular.
Okay, I looked it up and I have seen it. I have
Yes,
seen
it was very popular in the Middle East and Italy, but apparently it just tanked in Japan.
Huh.
So like when I was there, it was almost impossible to find like any action figures or anything for the show.
Wow.
But it's like when they know that it's super popular in the Middle East, it's like kind of interesting. We had an event once in Jordan, which we invited Nagai Go, who is the creator of Mazinger and Grindizer, over to Jordan. The company that I was working at the time organized it. So he signed a whole bunch of stuff for us. And it was a really cool event. He was blown away by how many people know his stuff. Can sing the song and
Grindizer was huge.
Know all the moves. Grindizer, man, was like the biggest thing ever. It's like it's a cartoon that defined a generation as far as I could tell. So he was received the reception of heroes. He did not expect that at all.
He's like, at home they kind of like this, but here.
Yeah, it's like I got to I'm in Jordan. It's I'm gonna show. He was part of the show was he's gonna talk a bit about his history and then show an episode of his latest Messenger, which at the time was 2006 or something like that. So latest is now a bit old. So he thought he was telling me, he was like, I expected I'll see 15 people, maybe 20.
Right.
And then he walks into this auditorium with 500 people. And he's like, today at least 9 people spoke Japanese to me. And I was
Aww. That is lovely.
That's incredible.
It's really nice to be abroad.
How often that happens. Yeah. I'm curious how often that happens.
I mean, so much Japanese made it around the world, to the Arab world in particular, but also to the Netherlands. It was probably probably a lot of stuff that I could watch both in Dutch and in Arab was just Japanese stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
American animation
That was
wasn't
an odd thought.
popular in the Arab world. Like I'm thinking of all the Japanese cartoons, and I didn't see those. Those were only in the Netherlands, never in the Arab world.
Yeah, the anime stuff took over.
Right.
Like we got like Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. Like those were kind of universal.
Right.
But compared to that, and like like the Ninja Turtles are cool, but like الشجعان الثلاثة we're three friggin' robots that combine and make a one giant robot.
Yeah.
And then just turtles.
I can't remember. Did Power Rangers make it over to the Arab world? I can't remember where I watched that. I'm trying to place it in the Netherlands or in Egypt, and I can't figure it out.
Wasn't that big.
It wasn't that big,
Power
right?
Rangers.
It didn't make it.
There was the anime that inspired that. Also was huge in the Middle East called Voltron.
Yeah,
I used to watch
Voltron. That was it. Yeah, that's what happened. Voltron was big in the Middle East, and Power Rangers was big in the Netherlands. That's what happened.
Yeah, I had Voltron toys too.
Do you remember
the
Power Rangers? Power Rangers were like inspired by the Kamen Rider series, which is like the Japanese thing, and the Kamen Rider series were inspired a lot by Ultraman. And Ultraman had a variation that made it to the Middle East under Rajul Hadidi.
Oh,
that sounds familiar.
You guys should Google that because Rajul Hadidi was massive. Because it's basically a dude. It's like Rajul Hadidi is a giant dude in like a Power Rangers like outfit that is fighting dinosaurs as they're destroying cities. Rajul Hadidi is the bomb, man. It's so cool. Also, you can find the entire thing on YouTube in Arabic.
Nice. Okay, that's on my wish list.
Absolutely. As a fellow fan of fighting games, Fauzi, do you remember Tatsunoko versus Capcom?
Of course.
So Tatsunoko versus Capcom had half Capcom characters and half Japanese animations that were supposed to be obscure that they didn't want to release in the United States because they didn't think they would know them. And to my shock, half of them were from cartoons that I used to watch dubbed in Arabic and that I just didn't know their Japanese names. So that was a really interesting, like, what's blast from the past, as they say. Did you have the similar experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I know a lot of those characters.
Yeah, like June the Swan, like all the what's it, Thunderbirds? What were they called? I don't remember, but they had a whole bunch of those.
Thunderbirds, but we had a different name in Arabic. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah. Thunderbirds?
All of these.
Yeah.
I watched the Thunderbirds, but I don't think you're talking about the Thunderbirds now.
Maybe it's not the Thunderbirds. It was similar though. It's other bird type anime characters that went into space.
Yeah.
The Thunderbirds I watched was a bunch of Brits with spaceships.
Then it's probably a different.
It's very good series though, by the way. If you haven't watched the Thunderbirds, it's really good.
The one we're talking about is a bunch of people in white tights and helmets.
That somehow sounds better.
Silverhawks. I think I mixed up Thunderbirds with Thundercats. Right. They're made from the same studio or something.
Yeah, I used to have the Thunderbirds Island as a toy. That was good stuff.
One of my favorite animes growing up that I watched is called Jazeerat al-Kanz, or Treasure Island, which is basically the Robert Louis Stevenson book, but with a Japanese twist.
Oh boy.
Incredible show. And I rewatched it again 3 years ago, and it absolutely holds up. Like it's good. It's solid.
Wow. I'm starting to feel like if people if people have listened to this episode, their list of TV series is like the same way you two usually feel when I'm done talking about indie games. Because we just have 25 different TV series we've mentioned this from the Animatrix to Captain Magic. It's like there's something for everybody.
70s anime,
right? Like this is just the 70s anime episode. I mean, if you were an Arab kid, there's no way around it. You probably watched anime. So
Arab kids listening to this, or like Arab people watching or listening from our generations, they're really nostalgic.
Right. Yes. Well, let's give people some time to deal with their nostalgia then and look up some of these series. I think this is a good point to wrap it up for today because my paper is full. I don't have more space for more notes. Like I'm out of notes. Good. I think we're going to wrap it up for that. For everybody listening, do join us at the Discord. That is at discord.thehabibis.com. Subscribe to the podcast, listen to earlier episodes. Come join us. Thanks so much for being here, and salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I was Rami Ismail, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at @THA_Rami. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. The intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubaydah, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and salam.